63. St. Ambrose. As men and women grow very old, they walk with increasing caution, knowing how fragile now are their bones and how unsteady and unsure their feet. The early churchmen had none of this hesitancy in their lives and writings. They wrote carefully, but with a holy boldness. They are easily criticized because they are unequivocal in their statements. Their writings were marked by clarity in their yea and nay. One of the more plain-spoken, St. Ambrose of Milan, was also a man without rashness. His strength was in his clarity and courage, marked by a godly judiciousness. This was apparent, for example, in the controversy over a basilica. Ambrose, circa 340 to 397, was born in Treves, the son of an important Roman official. Trained in Rome to be a lawyer, he entered into the service of Rome. As governor, ruling out of Milan, he was confronted with a problem when Bishop Auxentius, an Arian, died. The Arians and the Orthodox Christians were in immediate conflict over a successor. Ambrose, in attempting to adjudicate the matter, so pleased both sides that they united in making him the bishop, although he was only a catechumen. Within a week, Ambrose was baptized, was ordained into all lower orders, and was consecrated as bishop. He then studied the faith carefully to become a strong bishop, the mainstay of the poor and needy, and an unwavering enemy of any attempt by the emperors to control the church. His conflicts with the emperors were many, and his successes very important to the history of the church. It is noteworthy that Ambrose began his work as a bishop by selling his great personal estates and giving their proceeds, together with much gold and silver, to the poor. He reserved only an allowance for his devout sister Marcella. He was always a friend to the poor. His faults in this direction lay in his belief in a kind of voluntary neo-communism. Ambrose was also a great administrator. When the Emperor Theodosius slaughtered thousands of innocent people as a reprisal for a riot, Ambrose demanded his repentance and refused Theodosius the Holy Communion. Theodosius pointed to the fact that King David had committed both murder and adultery. Ambrose answered, "Well, if thou hast imitated David in sin, imitate him also in repentance." Theodosius submitted to church discipline, made public confession of his sin, and received absolution only after issuing a law requiring a 30-day delay between a death sentence and an execution. Our concern here is with two other episodes. First, the request of Prefect Symmachus to the emperor for a pagan restoration, notably of the altar of victory and Vestal Virgins. Second, Valentinian II's attempt to seize a basilica for Arian worship. Turning first to the request of Symmachus, we find that his request had, among other things, two clear emphases. First, Symmachus was asking for the re-establishment of historic Roman paganism in the name of religious liberty. Thus, establishment was identified with freedom. This would be, Ambrose held, compulsion for the Christians, and Christians would be compelled to swear at heathen altars, at civil centres. The living religious activity of the day was Christian, moreover. Without state support, paganism had no future. Second, Symmachus downplayed his anti-Christianity by asserting the oneness, and hence equal status, of all religions. Since the Roman gods were the historic deities of the Senate, what harm was there in replacing them into their ancient status? 10. We ask then for peace for the gods of our fathers and of our country. It is just that all worship should be considered as one. We look in the same stars. The sky is common. The same world surrounds us. What difference does it make by what pains each seeks the truth? We cannot attain to so great a secret by one road, but this discussion is rather for persons at ease. We offer now prayers, not conflict. In the name of tolerance, paganism was to be re-established as the faith of Rome. Ambrose's response was, "Has any heathen emperor raised an altar to Rome?" One emperor much earlier had placed a statue in his private chapel as a means of attempting to beguile Christians. Moreover, the pagan faith of old Rome held to the priority of the emperor over the gods, whereas Christianity declares that emperors are under Jesus Christ. 8. By one road, says he, one cannot attain to so great a secret. What you know not, that we know, by the voice of God. And what you seek by fancies, we have found out from the very wisdom and truth of God. Your ways, therefore, do not agree with ours. You implore peace for your gods from the emperors. We ask for peace for the emperors themselves from Christ. You worship the works of your own hands. We think it an offence that anything which can be made should be esteemed God. God wills not that he should be worshipped in stones, and, in fine, your philosophers themselves have ridiculed these things. It was true, Ambrose said, that some properties of the pagans had been confiscated, but not gifts to the shrines, but their land alone has been taken away, because they did not use it religiously, that which they claimed in right of religion. As against this, the Church had been religious in the uses of its possessions. The Church has no possessions of her own except the faith, hence are her returns, her increase. The possessions of the Church are the maintenance of the poor. Let them count up how many captives the temples have ransomed, what food they have contributed for the poor, to what exiles they have supplied the means of living. Their lands, then, have been taken away, not their rights. Precisely because the Church was so active in all these and other areas of charities, the emperors could not easily oppose men like Ambrose. Their governmental powers through charity were very important. Turning now to the attempt of Valentinian II to seize a basilica for Arian worship, we encounter an important fact of the day. Arianism had power, among other reasons, for two telling facts. First, Arianism affirmed a non-divine Christ and became thereby an excellent vehicle and cover for a disguised paganism and anti-Christianity. It was a popular faith with some emperors for this reason. They could call themselves Christians without any real belief in the essentials of biblical faith. It was, in this respect, similar to the faith of many churches of our time. Second, there were many sincere, unthinking, but dedicated Arians, and the key elements in their ranks was the army. The army contained great numbers of Goths, and the Goths had been converted to an uncritical Arian faith. The Arian emperors thus had a double reason for championing that faith. The conflict with Ambrose began when Valentinian attempted to gratify his Arians by ordering that a basilica be turned over to them. As Ambrose wrote to his sister, 2. First of all, some great men, councillors of state, begged of me to give up the basilica and to manage that the people should make no disturbance. I replied, of course, that the temple of God could not be surrendered by a bishop. The emperor's move was highly unpopular, and a popular resistance followed. Ambrose had communicated his spirit to the people. This attempt occurred during Lent. Ambrose wrote, 5. Whilst offering the oblation, I heard that a certain Castulus, who, the Arians said, was a priest, had been seized by the people. Passers-by had come upon him in the streets. I began to weep bitterly and to implore God in the oblation that he would come to our aid, and that no one's blood be shed in the Church's cause, or at least that it might be my blood shed for the benefit not of my people only, but also for the unbelievers themselves. Not to say more, I sent priests and deacons and rescued the man from violence. 6. Thereupon the heaviest sentences were decreed, first upon the whole body of merchants, and so, during the holy days of the last week of Lent, when usually the bonds of debtors are loosed, chains were heard grating, were being placed on the necks of the innocent persons, and £200 weight of gold was required within 3 days' time. They replied that they would give as much or twice as much, if demanded, so that only they might preserve their faith. The prisons were full of tradespeople. A delegation came at once to urge Ambrose to be reasonable and to surrender the basilica to the emperor. Ambrose wrote his sister about the incident. 8. The counts and the tribunes came and urged me to cause the basilica to be quickly surrendered, saying that the emperor was exercising his rights, since everything was under his power. I answered that if he asked of me what was mine, that is, my land, my money, or whatever of this kind was my own, I would not refuse it, although all that I have belonged to the poor, but that those things which are God's are not subject to the imperial power. If my patrimony is required, enter upon it. If my body, I will go at once. Do you wish to cast me into chains or to give me to death? It will be a pleasure to me. I will not defend myself with throngs of people, nor will I cling to the altars and entreat for my life, but will more gladly be slain myself for the altars. 9. I was indeed struck with horror when I learnt that armed men had been sent to take possession of the basilica, lest, while the people were defending the basilica, there might be some slaughter which would tend to the injury of the whole city. I prayed that I might not survive the destruction of so great a city, or it might be of the whole of Italy. I feared the odium of shedding blood. I offered mine own neck. Some Gothic tribunes were present, whom I accosted and said, Have you received the gift of Romans' rights in order to make yourselves disturbers of the public peace? Whither will you go if things here are destroyed? Ambrose's point was a telling one. The Goths were faithful and able servants of the empire, but they were alien to Roman law and, in their ignorance, could destroy the very empire they now served and loved. The Arians did not include the citizens, but only a few of the royal family and some of the Goths. Valentinian had to surrender. The whole city was against him. He ordered the soldiers to leave the basilica, to release the merchants, and to restore the money exacted from them. The soldiers welcomed this reversal. Valentinian showed an ugly spirit in his surrender, telling his counts, If Ambrose bade you, you would deliver me up to him in chains. Ambrose wrote to Valentinian and said in part, 35. We pay to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. Tribute is due to Caesar, we do not deny it. The church belongs to God, therefore it ought not to be assigned to Caesar. For the temple of God cannot be Caesar's by right. 36. That this is said with respectful feeling for the emperor, no one can deny. For what is more full of respect than the emperor should be called the son of the church? As it is said without sin, since it is said with the divine favour. For the emperor is within the church, not above it. For a good emperor seeks the aid of the church and does not refuse it. The role of Ambrose in forming the medieval Catholic and Calvinist resistance to the state is deserving of emphasis. Of the early church's discipline over rulers, Calvin wrote, From this discipline none were exempted, so that princes and plebeians yielded the same submission to it, and that's with the greatest propriety, since it is evidently the discipline of Christ, to whom it is reasonable that all the sceptres and diadems of kings should be subject. Thus, Theodosius, when Ambrose excluded him from the privilege of communion on account of a massacre perpetuated at Thessalonica, laid aside the ensigns of royalty with which he was invested, publicly in the church bewailed his sin, which the deceitful suggestions of others had tempted him to commit, and implored pardon with groans and tears. For great kings ought not to think it any dishonour to prostrate themselves as suppliants before Christ the King of Kings, nor ought they to be displeased at being judged by the Church. What the Church Fathers did was to alter man's view of life, because they placed man into the essential relationship to God through Christ, supplanting thereby the supposedly essential and basic relationship of pagan man to the state. Moreno described the change thus: Christianity has not only caused a great spiritual and social revolution, but it has been the source of equally important revolutions in the political sphere as well. The pagan state was a political, ethical, and religious unity in which the individual realized his own natural perfection. The individual did not transcend the polis, and his interests did not extend beyond its confines. No personal interests which transcended this present life were recognized or admitted by the state. In the ancient world, religion consisted in a complex relationship between God and man, but only insofar as these relations were profitable to men in time, and especially to the state. The result was that the state was necessarily concerned not only with political matters, but also with religious matters as well. The state thus absorbed both ethics and religion by reducing them to its own proper functions. For paganism, religion was an affair of state. For Christianity, politics was now an affair of religion. At the same time, there was a shift also in the realm of the sacred from the state to God. Moreno wrote, On the other hand, the state, the civitas, was the res sacra par excellence. This was so true that everything that belonged to the state or was part of the civitas was considered to be sacred. Thus, for example, the walls and gates of a city were sacred, holy religious things. Res sacri, sancti, religiosi. The destruction of this exaltation of the states as the source of sacredness began with the resistance of the Christian martyrs to the claimed lordship of Caesar. It was set forth clearly by Ambrose. Ambrose, moreover, distinguished between God-given authority and the quest for power, saying, The ordering of authority is from God, the desire for power is from the devil. Ambrose acted out of authority, not from a desire for power. He said, In a cause of God, where there is danger to the community, it is no small sin to act as though one saw nothing. Western freedom owes much to men like Ambrose. It cannot survive without men of like faith and courage.